Thanks very much, Cahirla. So I want to raise this issue about what was reported in the Irish Times last night as a government plan for special education centres as emergency response to shortage of appropriate school places. It caused a huge amount of alarm to the organisations representing parents and children with special needs and the parents themselves, who have been campaigning very, very hard to get their kids the places in school that they need, which may be supports in mainstream classes, but also maybe special classes in mainstream schools. And it caused a lot of alarm, the idea that people are going to be just put into these special centres, and then the worry in reality being that they're forgotten about and this is institutionalised. I know there was a meeting today with the Minister and groups including As I Am, so I'm interested in hearing back in relation to that. The basic points I'll make, I'll go through the concerns that they have and that I have. The first is that there was no consultation before this is announced. It seems very strange, like it's only a matter of weeks since you had a kind of indication from Minister Madigan that we're going to go the route of going Section 37A, directing the schools to open classes, and that was generally welcomed by parents because that's what parents feel, that's what needs to happen. But then all of a sudden we have this special education centres being announced, which seems to be a kind of 180-degree policy turn with no consultation. The second major point is the real concern that what is presented as an interim measure becomes a permanent measure. I mean, too often in this state we know of circumstances like that. Many things that are with us today, direct provision perhaps one of the worst examples, was an interim measure still with us today. There's also concern when you look at the numbers included, that is included here. It talks about there being 5 schools with 24 pupils each, that amounts to space for 120 pupils, but it talks about there being 80 children waiting for a special class in Dublin at this stage, and this is for Dublin. So that also gives rise to alarm that, why have we got an extra 40 spaces here? Is it because they're going to be filled over years, and how long is this planned to be for? Another important point is the danger that this is a move away from integrated education for students. Where are these buildings going to be? Clearly, if it's for September, they're not going to be new buildings. They clearly already exist somewhere. So if they aren't in existing schools, well then you won't have the potential for the integration time with students without additional needs, and that is a very important and kind of recognised thing that is necessary for students, and is why, like earlier on, the Taoiseach was saying, look, some students do need special schools. I acknowledge that, no problem with that. But this story certainly doesn't refer to those students and their students' needs. It refers to those children waiting for a special class in Dublin, i.e. a special class in mainstream schools. And for those children, that's what's being diagnosed, that's what's most appropriate for them, and that's what would represent a vindication of their rights. The fourth point I would make is the fundamental point that this is a way of not doing what is necessary in terms of not vindicating their rights, including under the UN CRPD, and that route of going down 37A, directing schools to open places, and then resourcing the schools appropriately, but that is what's necessary. And this is a way of getting away from the pressure to say, okay, now at least people have a place. It may not be the best place, but at least they have a place. And then we avoid this question, which is that we need to get a lot more special classes opened up in mainstream schools, both in primary and in post-primary education.
Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you very much, Deputy Murphy, for raising this, and I'm glad that the Minister for Disabilities is here as well to listen to your comments. There wasn't, in terms of the substance of your points, not much we would have disagreed with, I think, quite frankly. I think, in fairness to Minister Madigan, not much she would disagree with as well, because I think there's no decision has been made about this, I think, is the bottom line. Can I apologise for Minister Madigan for not being here? She's actually at the Middletown Centre for Autism today, so to be fair to her, that's where she is, which again is another place that does essential work, and I should say on a north-south basis, actually. It's very important to remember that. And I have to say, enabling children with special education needs is to receive an education appropriate to their needs is a constitutional right, basically, and a priority for this government. The department will invest this year €2 billion, or over 25% of the department's budget, in the area of special education needs support. And the truth is that the number of special education teachers, special needs assistants, special classes, schools places are all at unprecedented levels. And in Budget 22, we did provide for the creation of 287 additional special classes. So there are a lot more, like, to be fair, there are a lot more special classes than there were. There's not enough, I accept, but there is a lot more, and huge progress has been made. I want to thank those schools who've been cooperating with the department and looking for these classes. So they will provide 1,700 new places this year. So that brings our total number of special classes to 2,435. So from 2011, there was 548 special classes in mainstream schools and 2,148 in this particular school year. So look, the Department of Education, in recognising some of the difficulties experienced by parents in securing appropriate school placement, which is a huge concern to all of us, to Minister Rabbitte, to me, certainly my former role was a huge priority, and I'm very proud to be the person on behalf of my party who put forward the legislation to allow the Minister to force schools to open classes. That was a really important issue for me. I'm very passionate about it, but as is this government, and I don't think there's any doubt about that. So the streamlining process that we're trying to do in a joined-up planning process and a forecasting process, which wasn't there and is there now, is allowing us to be more targeted to meet demand for special needs placements ahead of each school year. And the approach is starting to deliver, because we've seen 300 special classes providing 1,800 places already open at the start of this year. The National Council for Special Education has responsibility for coordination and advising on the education for provision for children with special education needs. It has well-established structures in place for engaging with schools and parents. The Department of Education recognises that where parents have difficulties in securing an appropriate school placement for their child, particularly a child with additional needs, it can be and is a stressful experience. We all know that, talking to the constituents who come to us. The Department of Education is working hard to ensure that there are sufficient school places appropriate to the needs of all children available on a timely basis nationwide. As I said, this is a constitutional right that has to be put in place for children. In line with the demographics and as part of forward planning, it is envisaged that special classes will be required at most, if not all, post-primary schools in Dublin. And a range of measures to meet additional special education needs capacity demands have already been put in place, including the utilisation of spare capacity in existing schools and the delivery of additional special education needs capacity within the scope of existing school building projects. So additionally, it's now general practice to include a special education needs base in the accommodation brief for new school buildings, unless there's exceptional circumstances. But the extent of provision made at these schools is informed by the level of demand in the area as well as the size of the school. So the NCSE is currently engaged in a process of establishing new classes for next year and beyond. I better continue this because this is the important part.
You'll be coming in again.
Yeah, but this is important. The options, one of the options being discussed.
We keep the deadline.
I accept that, but this is not the issue. One of the options being discussed is by Minister Madigan.
Thank you, Minister.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But I kind of did make the point. It's not a decision.
The Minister's, the kind of punchline is this is very much a temporary, the draft proposal is very much a temporary option. For those who are waiting, it's very draft, etc., etc. So I get the message. I mean, there is nonetheless a proposal, you know, because As I Am have a statement on Facebook after the meeting saying they sought to assure us, like here, no decision has been made, listen to the concerns, but As I Am make the point, the current proposal, so there clearly is still a proposal, is not something our organisation could ever support. And I do think the department needs to go back to the drawing board on this one, most definitely, just how exactly this was come up with. And I would go back to, I mean, I very much welcome Section 37A. I think it needs to be used. And I know that's not an easy thing to do, but it has only been used twice, and the need is very great. I mean, I give you the example of where a part of where I represent in Dublin 24. The issue about post-primary schools is phenomenal. I mean, the Taoiseach a couple of weeks into it all described it as crazy to me. You have a situation where you have 17 primary schools with a special class and only one that's going to go up to 2, but 1 or 2 at post-primary level, when generally the ratio across the country is like 2.2, 2.3 to 1. So it's completely out of whack. And, you know, the consequence is, like I was in touch with a campaigner earlier, said she's a list of 6 families without a school place for next September. They've all applied for schools across Dublin, gotten multiple refusal letters. A list of all the schools, second level schools, which don't have ASD classes. It's just, that's not on. And like the idea that we're going to put people in special education centres as opposed to saying this has to happen in schools. We'll provide the resources so that it can happen in schools, but it can't just be the case that when a new school gets built, well then we have a class. Okay, great. It's good that in every new school we have a class, that's good, but that isn't going to be quick enough. We're not building schools quick enough to deal with it.
Well, look, as the Deputy has noted, the draft proposal is very much it's an option, not a decision, is what the Minister emphasised to me today. It's not a decision. It's very much at an early stage and subject to further engagement, and I'm really glad that some of that engagement has already happened, where strong views have been expressed at the meeting and indeed in public statements as well. So there's clearly further significant work required to progress this. The key goal is that the educational rights under our Constitution for children with special education needs are fulfilled, and that must be always our guiding light and our guiding objective in all of this, along with our international obligations under various UN charters as well, as Deputy Rabbitt has reminded me too, and I thank her for her commitment in that, and reminding us all it's not just somewhere to go, it's a constitutional right and an international obligation of the state as well. So we take that seriously in government, and I know that Minister Madigan does, and we'll see where this goes, but serious concerns have been expressed, and I want to be clear that no decision has been made.